You're looking at Ubisoft's stock market listing and its current problems as of July 19th. Now, what I want you to take a look at particularly, right, is where that drop happened in addition to when Lockley's lies were revealed to the public. That's what we're looking at right here is news of Thomas Lockley's lies about Yasuke hitting the open world market here and the stock market responding. There's that dive right there on the 19th. Now, this isn't live. This is a screenshot from a couple days ago. So let's go take a look at how they're doing today. Surely they've recovered, right? Oh no, they're down 9.19%. Ooh, that's bad. $4.25. 5 cents shy off from a meme. How about that? I wonder if we can get it there. But anyway, as you can see, the drop is here, and they've made about roughly about a little under half of that back, but then dropped again and are on their way to a downward trend again. It looks like the value of the Ubisoft the Ubisoft stock will not be rising anytime soon. But who knows? It may go through a massive investment here in the next few days, as they've got to save face somehow to somebody, I guess. Whoever's owning these stocks should get their return on them, huh? Oh, wait. Who owns these stocks? Oh, wait. It's Tencent. It's Tencent. It's China's Tencent. That's who has 15% stake in Ubisoft and 5% voting rights. Yeah, as of 2022. So I assure you they've bought more since then. So they have 49% of the Guillemot. I don't know. I don't speak French. Brothers Limited. And the company holds 15% of the stake in Ubisoft. So there you go. So I guess Tencent wants their money back, maybe. Maybe we'll see Tencent drop some money in there to make sure that the stock goes back up again, incentivizing other people to jump in. Who knows? But I don't have a lot of confidence in that after what's been dropped over the weekend here about their most ardent supporters there in Yasuketown. Little Yasuketown, where everybody who was Japanese is black now. Oh, by the way, this historian, Kenji, I believe it's Kenji Hirayama, he, it turns out he's a Marxist communist. If you don't know who this guy is, right? If you don't know who this guy is, he is the historian that came out and backed up Longley over the weekend. He came out and said, yeah, well, he echoed Thomas's thing that there isn't any document that says Yasuke wasn't a samurai, right? But there also isn't documentation that says he was either. There isn't any documentation really of Yasuke. There's a few paragraphs here and there's a few mentions of him here and there, but that's about it. You'd think if he was some legendary warrior, so storied and respected that, some of that would get out into the world. But no, as it turns out, that's not the case. And there we go, Thomas Lockley running for the hills. And now a communist, a member of the oh-so-wonderful and adored Communist Party of Japan. I'm speaking with sarcasm. If you need to know how the Japanese feel about communism, feel free to Google Japanese Communist Party bad day. And I'm sure you'll find an image or two about just how the Japanese feel about communism. This is the same group of people trying to ban fan service in anime, boobs and butts, because it sexualizes women. And we can't have that. We can't do that to women. Guys, come on. Who would sexualize women? Especially the Japanese who have a plummeting birth rate, a plummeting replenishment rate. Who would sexualize women? The devils. The horror. Well, anyway, this jerk off comes from that. So let's see what he has to say about his dear, beautiful communism as of January 18th of this year. Meaning this isn't like old news. And when he's talking about his time with the party, it's when he was active with the party. Not that he left the Communist Party. All right, so let's see what he has to say. He says, there's been a lot of talk about the state of the Japanese Communist Party convention. It hasn't changed at all since the end of the Showa era, and when I was a member, and the early Heisei era. Now, this would be like the late 80s, early 90s. Showa was the era where a lot of Godzilla movies were made, and then I think Heisei era is where you see more of the techno-looking common riders show up, a bit more millennial design, a little bit more millennium thinking design starts showing up in their media. I think I think Heisei Godzilla is the one with the cat face. I'm not making fun of Godzilla. I just think he looks like a cat. And I think that's Heisei Godzilla. I could be wrong. I want to say Showa Godzilla is the more playful rubber suit kind of character, and Heisei Godzilla is the one that's like really attacky, like the Godzilla 2000 kind of Godzilla, right? With Kiryu there with the lasers, and he goes crazy and blows up Tokyo. Anyway, back to this that's way less interesting than that. I remember Iri Kazumoto being expelled for criticizing Miyamoto Kenji, but I remember how long they intend to hold on to Lenin's unique, but I wonder how long they intend to hold on to Lenin's unique organizational theory, which sought to build a party under Russia's unique autocratic regime as a golden rule. This time in particular, I think the situation is even worse than it was in the Showa era. The expulsion of Shimasato Masaki in the Heisei era was also truly terrible. So this guy is feeling the Communist Party. So he's not just like a casual guy that got in because I don't know, they're hippies or something. I'm not sure what they are in Japan. All I know is that they're a real drag. I don't think that they're bad people. They could be. I'm not sure. I don't live there. But from what I hear, the communists are just typical communists. They're insufferable people that think the world should work the way that they think and only the way that they think. And so this is the guy that's backing up Thomas Lockley's claim that Japan is a racist place that participated in the African slave trade. Get that, by the way. Feel free to go ahead and Google that. But Thomas Lockley and David Adkins are going around saying that Japan was part of the African slave trade. I've even heard from some of our Japanese commenters, and I haven't confirmed this yet because I don't speak Japanese, so the sources that I can confer with have to be people who are there that do speak Japanese and can relay to me the conversation that's happening. So please, if I sound like I doubt you and you're one of the people that pass this information along, that is not the case. I do not doubt you. The problem is that I can't verify what's being said to prove it to people out here in the wild, out here in YouTube land. So as soon as I can find that information where I've got good screenshots of subtitles or a transcript in English, something like that, to where I can find where these guys are actually saying with their whole chest that Japan was part of the African slave trade, I will absolutely be reporting on that more earnestly. But for right now, I just can't find anything that 100% says they said that. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of podcasts where they say it right out loud, but it's in Japanese, and I don't know. I just don't speak it, and my audience doesn't either. So it's hard for us to, go out and present that as information, as evidence. So what we need to remember here, above all, right, is that this guy has come out in defense of these people that are warping history. And what do we know about Marxists? What do we know about communists? What do we know about people who appreciate Lenin? Well, they sure do like to tell lies. And they sure do like to rewrite history to make things more convenient and incredibly, incredibly tilted against the powers that be. And wouldn't you know, good and decent Japanese people are starting to take over their country again. At least that's what I'm being told. The government's being reclaimed back from people who are less focused on the people and more focused on the individual. Which, again, I don't live there. I do not know if this is true. This is what I'm going off of what I'm being told in the comments by people who tell me that they are Japanese citizens and that their politics is swinging back toward the individual. So this is something that this communist guy is like picking up on. And now they want to bring out Yasuke because, again, he's in a concert of other characters around the world that are remapping what people believe to be history. Now, what is the problem with saying this man is a samurai? It's an honor to be a samurai, right? Well, the problem is that this man lived a very unique life. Yasuke, the slave, the servant of Nobunaga, who was never a samurai, okay? We know this because Lockley ran away, and his greatest ally to come out and defend him was a communist that's for hire, by the way. You know that. The communists that charge top dollar for their opinion, he's one of those. The NHK, their newspaper system, their BBC, basically. It's not the same, but it's close. Their news agency went out and hired this guy. He's one of those experts you see on TV that tells you all about the things you should believe and tells you not to believe the things you shouldn't, you see? And that's what we're dealing with. So Yasuke rewriting his life, right? That steals away the actual miracle of it. And I've talked about this at length before in previous videos, but I'll just quickly reiterate it. The Japanese were merciful not to kill Yasuke. You have to understand, he looked like no one they'd ever seen before. And I just want to take a minute and just really think about that in the 1500s, these people who had no social compulsion, there was nobody out on the planet telling them not to do anything terrible to these people, to Yasuke. There was nobody out there enforcing a moral authority to see these people as equal. It was not the same. It was not the same as today. And for whatever reason, the Japanese people, not just Nobunaga and his subordinates, but the villagers and the people that Yasuke encountered along the way, chose not to kill him. And that is an astonishing, compassionate thing for them to do. This is not that the Japanese are closed-minded and evil. It is that they had never seen a person that looked like him before. This is Japan. This isn't Italy. This isn't Egypt. This isn't France. This isn't a place where these land masses are connected and they eventually would meet each other on some type of battlefield or at a market. No. There was no earthly reason for an African to be in Japan in the 1500s. They were brought there against their will, and I believe, if I could be wrong, Yasuke probably was the only African on that island at the time, on those islands at the time. I could be wrong, but if he wasn't, there was only a couple more. There was not a huge population, despite what Thomas Lockley and David Adkins want to tell you. But we're not done. We're going to go further down the rabbit hole here. So here's what I want to bring to your attention. This guy is getting, Hirayama is getting a lot of pushback, okay? So he says, I'm tired. I'll get back to work. I can't do this. As usual, the communist has to defend his positions. He runs away. He calls you all just not worth his time. He's too good for you. He's got work to do, you see. And you demanding the truth, you're distracting him. He's got more history to fabricate. So this person replies and says, that's because you lied. If you get a sword, you become a samurai, then merchants will become a samurai. You see the problem here? If you simply apply that anyone carrying a sword in the Sengoku era was considered a samurai, well, we have a problem. There were many people who carried a sword. There were many people who carried a sword that they weren't supposed to, too. So where does this leave us? Does this leave us with anybody with a sword means they're samurai? Of course that doesn't mean the case. Anybody with a gun makes them a sheriff? That's not the case. We know this to be true here in the U.S. This next person replies with, this is no different from the situation of colonial scholars, Thomas Lockley, give their stamp of approval to colonial historical perspective that is being trumpeted and consumed outside of Japan. So what this person is talking about is not necessarily specifically Thomas Lockley, but other historians that have come through and have also started to warp Japan's history to bend it more in line with what happened in Europe as opposed to what its own history actually was. Now, again, why isn't this okay? Why can't Japan have a separate history from the rest of the world? Because we're all supposed to be a gray blob globalist hellhole, okay? That's what it's all supposed to be. Some gray blob that doesn't have any culture to it, any feature to it. It's just stuff you can buy and sell. And, well, you don't own it. You live in a pod and you eat the bugs and you're happy, right? You're happy. Well, this Japanese citizen is not. And it says, why are they so eager to show off their academic expertise to Japanese people when they have nothing to say to English-speaking people? I think it's because they can be superior when competing against Japanese people. And this is true. Lockley comes through and he presents himself as an authority to even Japanese historians because he's an Englishman in a foreign land, and apparently that provides him license to talk down to them. To tell them that, no, Mr. Japanese man, you were wrong. You participated in the African slave trade. Wah, 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 wah. You did this, It's amazing, really, that these people operate with this mentality. But I must remind you, again, in Japan's history, England and Britain have not had a great relationship. Not had a great relationship. When the U.S. first arrived, we went into one of their deepest ports, anchored our ship, and wouldn't speak to anyone until the emperor himself left his castle, traveled all the way to this port, and received a letter from our president, I think it was Polk. I could be wrong. I think it was Polk. But, and that letter just said, hello. It didn't unscroll and it's just lol hello with an emoji with its tongue stuck out or anything like that. It just was a nice long letter introducing the United States as a viable trade option to the Japanese. Now, what had transpired, though, is that the Japanese tried to sink that ship over and over again. They tried to board it. And of course, the Americans simply met them with their rifles, their muskets and their Colt. I think it was the Colts. I think it was, yeah, it was the late 1800s we started visiting them, middle 1800s. Early? I think it was the early 1800s that we started doing more intense trading, I guess. But what I'm getting at is that they perceived us to be an aggressive like England. What had happened is that England wanted tariffs or some type of tax collected from the Japanese for doing business with them. And then they started shelling, cannonball firing on their coastal towns and like destroying these cities as like a threat that they would continue doing this until they were paid. And so the Japanese were very, very adversarial to English speakers. It didn't matter if you were an American or not. And that history has never left. The British have constantly been a bit like, too good for those Japanese, and not all the Britons, mind you, but it seems the government in particular has always had its nose up to the Japanese. Oh, the Japanese over there on the rising sun. You know, it's a bit like that, you know, and again, not all Britons are like this, but the government has maintained a pretty steady attitude that they just don't take Japan seriously. And I'm not sure why. I'm really not. The people who run the governments probably drove a Honda at some point in their lives, so or at least rode around in one. So I can't imagine why they're so judgmental toward these people. But it is what it is, right? We can't change their minds in history, but maybe we can change their minds in the future. And that's what's happening here. The Japanese citizens are coming out and they're trying to illustrate the actual reality of Yasuke. That yes, Nobunaga liked him, but didn't make him a samurai. And this person points out that this is very important too. Like our perception of Yasuke is important. You can call him a samurai in the same way that a page, a scout, is a soldier, right? In the same way that the guy cooking in the mess hall is a soldier, right? He can even be a captain. I've heard of that before, that the cooks have been made captains before. I've heard of that. And so, but they're cook. That's what they do all the time. They're not out on the front lines. They're not out there sieging the wall. They're the cook, you know? And Yasuke wasn't a cook. At most, I'm told that he was some type of ceremonial dagger carrier, that he had some kind of ornate dagger that was like a level up from what Naruto carries, but not a sword. It was not in any way like a military sword. But again, he existed in a time in Japan where there was a lot of like inter-clan fighting, so he should be armed. If he was a servant of Nobunaga or a property of Nobunaga, you would want that man to defend himself, one or the other. Anyways, until the next video, guys, good luck out there.